Hello, hello, hello. It is 9 a.m. in San Francisco, and this is Patricia Dugan coming to you live. I am very happy to be here with you today. Let's see. Well, let's start with what we have going on with containers and Traefik and bring you up to speed. I'm the director of community, and what I do is make marketing initiatives and things, fun things for companies, and also our developer pool, who is our huge community that we love so much. Traefik online meetups are ways, showcase ways that Traefik or mesh is being used to solve interesting technical challenges. What I need you to know, the most important thing is that we're hiring fun people, we're hiring talented people. And so if you're interested in joining our team, please go to containers/careers and see what we have to offer, and then apply via the website. We also have more events coming up, and you can take a look at those on our events page. KubeCon in Amsterdam in about a month, so we'll see you there. Now, let's get excited because today we have Andy Clemenko, who is a friend and also very talented human being, and he's going to present leveraging Traefik for a highly available Ingress controller on Docker Enterprise. He's a principal solutions engineer, StackRox, and things you need to know. One, he's well-versed in version 2.1. Two, he knows all about our service discovery. Three, he's a volunteer firefighter, which I wish I knew more about because I love fire trucks, but two, I love our firefighters. And three, he's a cyclist. So all of those things are on the table for you to ask questions about in the chat box. The way we go around questions and answers is you leave your questions in the chat box, and then we will go ahead and answer them at the end. Or if Andy chooses to go rogue, he might answer them during the show. So what I'm going to do now is pass the mic over to Andy, and then he's going to show us a fun, awesome, and interesting discussion. Sorry, we have questions coming in. Discussion about how to use Traefik and everything Andy knows about Traefik. So thank you for joining us today, and take it away, Andy.
Thanks, team. We've already got a question in, which is great to see. Let me get into it a little bit, and I'll do a quick overview of Docker Enterprise, because the question is, I'll read it in a sec. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Yeah, we'll share the whole desktop. Why not? We'll live dangerously. Okay, so just to kind of start off, right, we're talking about Docker Enterprise, and really what we're talking about is Traefik and high availability on Kubernetes. I'm a former Docker engineer, and so that's part of the reason why I like Docker Enterprise, right? Because it's a kube, it's really easy to install. For everyone that wants to follow along, I've got a link here on the screen. It's mdc.info/Traefik. This will actually take you to a GitHub page that has all the instructions, and I'll actually work from it too. So you can kind of follow along. You can pull down all the Kubernetes YAMLs and really start to get a little more deeper knowledge, because I don't want to sit here and read code to you. That's not the thing. Who am I, right? Before I get into this real quick, this is a conversation. Keep the questions coming in. I will answer them live. I like having engaging discussions. I am not the expert. I know a few things. You probably know a few things more than me. We're going to work on this together and kind of build our knowledge up. Okay, so who am I real quick? I'm a former DoD contractor. I've been living in the container space for going on 6 years now. It's been definitely fun and exciting. Let's put it that way. I'm a former Docker and solutions architect, principal solutions engineer for Docker. I've switched over to StackRox because I'm really trying to concentrate on this kind of security layer that goes around containers. Like I said, I've been drinking the Kool-Aid for 6 years. I've actually been using Traefik since like 0.5. I think it does a really good job of Ingress, and I used it on Swarm. I use it personally on Swarm for my personal websites today, but I also highly recommend it for Ingress, both from Docker over the last couple of years, and then now it's StackRox. Okay, so before I get in, let me get into Traefik real quick, and then I'll answer that question, I promise. So what and why? Hopefully you guys know all about Traefik. Traefik basically is the Swiss Army knife of Ingress. Does a lot of great things. Just think of it this way. This is going to be your Ingress controller. In other words, this is going to allow you to have a consistent endpoint and route your traffic kind of dynamically based on internal service discovery. The reason why I have empowering developers here is because it's declarative, because you can define what URLs you want or what that URL path is, the infrastructure engineers don't have to know that. You can declare it in code, you can check it in, you can do version control. And at the end of the day, you'll look cool doing it. I mean, heck, I got a hoodie out of it. So why high availability? Okay. For me, really, years ago, I was a system admin, infrastructure engineer. Having the ability to trust your infrastructure and not get woken up at 3 a.m. is the greatest thing. And to me, having high availability means that you do have not 100% uptime, but as close to it as possible. I also like taking time off, having a good work-life balance. That's actually a view from the house I'm renting in a couple months down in the Outer Banks in North Carolina. I like taking vacations. At the end of the day, high availability and automation will give you that assurance to go on vacations. And again, you look cool. Okay, that's cheesy, I know. Okay, so what we're building, we're gonna be building a 6-node cluster. We're gonna be using DigitalOcean for our hosting provider. We're gonna use the DigitalOcean load balancer. We are going to have, this whole cluster is built on Docker Enterprise. Docker Enterprise is an enterprise engine, as well as universal control plane, which does the Kubernetes, which does the RBAC, LDAP, all the bells and whistles you want from an enterprise kube cluster. And we're gonna have 3 worker nodes. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna pin traffic to those worker nodes, basically giving us a definitive path for that load balancer. And then we're gonna do node port or load balancer. We're using node port in this case because I'm using an external load balancer that's not Kube API aware yet. But if you're on AWS, you could use the load balancer that talks to AWS that spins up the load balancer for you. So the question that came in, and let me pull up the chat. The question that came in was, how does this affect Docker CE? And the real answer is, my mouse disappeared, I love that. I'll figure this out. The real answer is, I'm not gonna be going over Docker CE. The reason being is, Docker CE is just the engine. It doesn't have all of the clustering technology on top. Today, we're talking about Kubernetes. This can easily be applied to Swarm. It's just gonna be in how you whether it's a KubeVM or a Docker Compose up, it can be easily translated. The techniques I really want you to take away here is the idea that we're gonna pin traffic, 3 different copies of traffic. We're gonna pin it to individual nodes. We're gonna route traffic through it. And that kind of leads us into our network path. So our network path is, right, I've got a wildcard DNS of the load balancer. Then I've got, which is gonna route to the worker nodes. Then traffic service is gonna get the request. And then it's gonna route intelligently to the app or the service behind it. You guys wanna see how this works? I'm sure you do. Whoop, there's my mouse. So let me stop that. Check chat real quick because I like this being a conversation. Yes, sweet. Okay, so let's get to a demo. Let me minimize the keynote. So I'm working off of the GitHub page. Hopefully some of you have gone to it. Really right now I've got my cluster up and running. With Docker Enterprise, we have this thing called a source, a client bundle. And what it basically allows you to do is allows you to authenticate to the cluster. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to source my bundle. Now I'm talking to my cluster. And if you guys want to keep me honest, do get node so we can see that we've got a 6-node cluster. I've got 3 masters because again we want that high availability, and I've got 3 workers because again we want to make sure that we've got at least 3 because 3 is a really good number for high availability. Now in the documentation I've got set up external load balancer. I'm going to flip over to DigitalOcean in a second, but there's instructions here on to take a standard Nginx box, a CentOS box, do a yum install of Docker CE, and use Nginx as a load balancer. And we're using, just for edification, we're using the TCP streams, so it's not HTTP, it's just straight packet. So it doesn't interfere with TLS, doesn't interfere with any of that stuff, which is great. So let's go ahead and look at DigitalOcean real quick. So here I've got my load balancer, and it's in the NYC3. I got to attach the droplets to it. That's how they call it. So one of the things, the nice thing about it is this is in order in the way it was installed. So I know I need to add the 3 workers, which are the last 3. We can actually double check. So the 3 workers is 8090, 87, and BDE. So we go back here. 7, 8092. Did I get that wrong? No, I got that wrong. I got to come up with better host names. 92 is not in it. Is it? Yeah, it is. Wow, I'm having a brain fart this morning. I love it. Oh, wait, that's not in it. That's it. 87. Yep. Okay, we're good. Okay, so while that's, now one thing I've done is I've predefined a port, and this will come in play a little earlier, later. I've also predefined the health check as TCP, and I've dialed it down as far as I can to try and make this as responsive as possible. Really, when you're setting up a load balancer, you're going to have to understand what kind of latency, what kind of health checks, how you want the failover to go. That's going to be kind of an integral thing to figure out for your company, agency, for your location. Question came in, how do you connect K8S master with node with Traefik? We'll get to that. We'll definitely get to that. So I'm going to put that off to the side. Okay, so let's go back to droplets. Now, I expect these to be down because we don't have Traefik deployed yet. But if we go back here, we need to get, we can go ahead and set up DNS. So what I've done is I've already gone ahead and set up the wildcard DNS. Let me move some of these windows. Sometimes you wish I had a bigger computer. There we go, just hide it. So what we can do is we can go back and look. We can go back to load balancers, domains, docker.life. So I'm looking at the DNS. So I've got a bunch of DNS records, and notice I've got one app, which goes to the load balancer, and then I have a wildcard, which makes it very easy when you're deploying apps, right? I think the wildcard is one of the things you really need to think about internally to really be able to take advantage of this declarative service discovery, all that good stuff. Okay, what we need to do now is before we install Traefik, we need to label the nodes. So what we're doing is we're going to Kubernetes and we're saying, I want you to label these 3 nodes for Traefik. And the label itself is going to be Traefik equals Ingress. So this is a little script that I have. And when I build my clusters, just to show you, I have this host file, and just it allows me to parse and understand which 3, like the bottom 3 are the workers, the top 3 are the masters, the first one is the first controller, right? And kind of build out the cluster logic that way. You can do this anyway. The reason why I like pinning it to the worker nodes is I want to make sure that the worker nodes, the load is not going to be on the masters. Let the masters do their thing, and let the workers kind of do the heavy lifting. Let's actually go and deploy Traefik in a sec. One thing I just want to point out, because this is for Kubernetes, this is not designed for Swarm, but it can be easily adapted to Swarm, these techniques. But for Kubernetes, I basically have a set of YAMLs in GitHub that will deploy a namespace, a service account, create the cluster role and the cluster role binding. It's going to deploy Traefik as a daemon set to only nodes that have this label. So if you wanted to scale from 3 to 5 to 7 to 100 Traefik, if you wanted every node in your cluster to be Traefik, cool. Put the label in, or you could actually remove the requirement for the label. You got a lot of control there. The service binds the daemon sets together, then the ingress talks to the service. Easy way to think of it. Another thing we can look at is Traefik's configuration as well. One of the things that we need to do is we need to set the API to insecure. That allows us to get to the dashboard. We need to tell Traefik where it's going to do its discovery of containers. In this case, we're using Kubernetes. I can give you an example if you want to hit me up on any of the socials. And I'll have links to my socials later. I have an example that I use for my own personal website with Swarm and Let's Encrypt. But we got to tell Traefik where to find its content, basically. We set a couple endpoints. I'm a big fan of Prometheus and Grafana. I love turning that on. And then I like the access log in case anything goes wrong. And then I set anonymous usage to false. And being a former government contractor, we'd always do that. And it's just that kind of mindset kind of stuck with me. So let's go ahead and actually deploy. So I think this is really a question. How do you connect Kate Masters with Node with Traefik? This is how you do it, right? So let's actually deploy it. So I've got my directory in a different place. And then quite simply, let's go ahead and deploy the controller. And as you can see here, it's deploying all those object types that we talked about. Now, what we can do, and I even have it, I'll copy and paste, it'd be nice. We can go and check and see where our pods are at. Okay, so we already have Traefik up and running, pretty quick, pretty simple. One thing we can also do is check the service port, because what I do is I expose Traefik on a separate port. Now I've already had these predefined. In this case, it's 33380. And so what we can do is we can go to a new tab. Let's set the bar for Zoom always gets in the way. So here, what we can do is I can go to any one of the nodes in the cluster, and I can go to that port, and here we've got the Traefik dashboard. Okay, let's take a look at some of these routes real quick. In case you're not familiar, the dashboard's fantastic for Traefik. With HTTP, it shows all the HTTP information, all the TCP information, because it is also a TCP router, which is a great thing. I like the dashboard because it kind of gives you a quick overview. Notice we've got the Prometheus already turned on. Our provider is Kubernetes Ingress. We've got access log on. If we wanted to enable tracing with the Jaeger or there's a few others out in the market, we can easily enable that feature within Traefik as well. My bread and butter really is going to the HTTP routers page, because this shows me what's configured and what's known. I want to point something out. See, it says Traefik.docker and path prefix. So notice we went to the port. Let's actually not go to the port. Let's actually try full on ingress. And that worked. We are actually routing Traefik's dashboard through Traefik's front door with an ingress object. That's kind of weird, but kind of cool, makes it real simple. So in theory, what we could do is not allow Traefik to the cluster and make sure all traffic goes through the load balancer. And that's a great way to create network isolation and kind of block the existence of some of these things. To extend this a little further, Traefik's got a great middleware kind of functionality where you can add in HTTP basic auth. They just added LDAP auth, which is pretty cool. So you can store users externally. You can tell Traefik to authenticate against an external service provider, aka LDAP, and makes it really, really slick how you can kind of build out some of this functionality. Okay, so we've got Traefik installed. Everything's working great. We've been able to go through the dashboard. Let's deploy an app. Let's deploy Prometheus and Grafana. Because one of the things, I don't know if you noticed, is we actually turned on our metrics, right? So remember, we're using Prometheus metrics. So let's actually see what we can get, what kind of information we can get out of it. So all I'm gonna do is go ahead and do my kubectl apply. I want you to watch the dashboard as this thing comes up. My window again, as this thing comes up, so a little bit. So we're starting to build our objects. As it comes up, because we're using the Kubernetes service discovery, the minute that ingress object gets created, that basically sends a signal, or I should say Traefik pulls the API every couple seconds to say, is there anything new? Is there anything new? Is there a new ingress object? Is there a new ingress object? And what ends up happening is as these things come up, notice Traefik now says there's 5 routers. And if we wait another second or two, now we've got 6. So we've actually added 2 routes. We added Prometheus and we added Grafana. So let's go back to the HTTP routers. And let's actually go, so we've labeled it prom.docker.life, and let's go to that. And by the way, all these URLs, everything I'm doing right now is live on the internet if you want to hit it. So we can go to prom, and now we've got our Prometheus up and running. And again, this is running in a service on a Kubernetes cluster, being routed through an external load balancer. And the nice thing about it is I have 3 copies of Traefik running. So I've got a highly available cluster with 3 masters, and I've got a highly available ingress now because I have 3 independent copies of Traefik. Okay, we can go to status and we can go to targets. One of the interesting things is the way I've got my Prometheus configured is that it looks for services. And as services come up, it says, hey, there's a service over there. We should probably scrape it. So what I've done, see it says service endpoints. What it allows me to do, kubestate metrics, Prometheus, Traefik ingress. Here we go. This is the instance. What it allows me to do is it allows me to say, okay, the minute the Traefik service comes up, Prometheus will automatically scrape it. So now I can actually start to get all of the Traefik metrics automatically. I didn't have to configure anything. Well, I mean, I had some pretty well-written YAMLs that helped. And there's vast community between Prometheus, Grafana, and Traefik to help with a lot of the stuff. So let's go to Grafana. Let's see what this looks like. So we go to Grafana, we go to the root. And again, this was that second service that we created, and it's working great. I'm not going to share the password just yet. When I'm done, I can leave this up for a while and you guys can hack out it if you want. When I install Grafana, I install a couple dashboards. My favorite one is Kube Cluster Health. And this kind of gives you an aggregate overview of the cluster and the cluster health and what's going on, kind of total aggregate capacity. But another thing I like is the node view. This shows me the individual nodes themselves. So I've got 6 nodes. I can get specific node metrics out of it. And then this is one I'm playing with. I know I'm going to admit it's not great. It's not perfect, but it's nice to have. So what we've got, let me set it from the last 3 hours, the last 5 minutes, is now, set this to like 1 minute interval. There we go. So what I've got now is I'm getting actually metrics from the Traefik service. My graph isn't the greatest. I'm not a Grafana expert by any means. One of the things that I think I personally want to work on is get a little better at it. But this starts to give you some idea of like total requests, average response time. So you could use this in alerting to understand what's going on with traffic in your cluster. This might be off topic, but how do we make these dashboards with Grafana and Traefik private or not accessible through the internet? Can you hide it somehow by filtering by IP? You could. So one of the things you can do is you can either say, you can basically tell Traefik, or you cannot create the Ingress object, which tells Traefik not to route it. But if you do want to route it, what you can do, Traefik has the ability to create a middleware where you can give it an admin password. So here you go, we'll divert for a sec. So if we go to dashboard.ndc.info, this is my personal website, right? And notice how I had a basic HTTP basic off. So what I do is I protect my dashboard with the username and password. That's the easiest way. And that way you still have one path. You don't have to worry about filtering IPs, and everyone can get to what they need to, and you can kind of delineate. And this is done through a middleware. Just kind of show you. I've got a middleware that says HTTPS off. And then I've also got a redirect middleware that says anything that comes in HTTP automatically take to HTTPS. Middlewares is a great function within Traefik that allow you to do that. I think that's probably the best answer. Okay, so we've got Grafana and stuff deployed, right? We've looked at Grafana, we've looked at Prometheus, we've looked at the routers page. Let's deploy a few more apps because I love how this works. Right, so give this a sec. And then what we can do is while that's churning, we can go to the routers page, or the dashboard page, sorry. We can watch it tick up. I love watching like, hey, I found something. Hey, I found something. It's like instant gratification, right? So we're at 7, and we'll go to 8 in a sec. There we go, we're at 8, and then we've added who am I, and we've added app. Okay, so let's go, and here's my who am I page. This is just a basic who am I, and you can see I'm round robining. We've got an app page. Now this will take a sec because Redis has got to come up and Mongo's got to come up, and then there we go, cool, it's up. And notice we've got 2 hits, right? So let's take a second and let's look at what it actually takes to define an object in Kubernetes for Traefik to pick it up. It's actually really easy. In fact, here's the code. Now this is taken from the whoami YAML. And by the way, all of the YAMLs that I'm using right now for this, other than building my cluster, are all right here in this project. I've also got the Keynote file, the PDF, and PowerPoint for the presentation itself. So it's easily consumable. Okay, so this Ingress object is really easy. All you have to do is give it the namespace. It doesn't matter where the namespace is because Traefik is set up to hit the Kube API. It can see it, and we give it permission to look at, to just read all of the objects across all the namespaces. You would store your Ingress object in your application namespace and really kind of keep that logical separation going. Host, I just tell it what the external URL is. The backend, I give it what service name and what port to list and what port it's listening on. That's it. So if we were to actually look at the YAML, we would see that the service object is listening on port 8000. So the service is listening on 8000 and the service name is who am I? There you go. Name, who am I? That's it. It's pretty simple. And so what you end up doing is in Kubernetes, you end up creating an Ingress object for each service. Each service points to a bunch of pods. Should be pretty straightforward. Okay, what other middleware capabilities does Traefik have? There's a long list. Path prefix, strip. There's a lot of things you can do with changing the URL string. So if you want to hide where a site is in a big long URL, there's a lot of, the list is long and we'll definitely find it real quick. For instance, data translation, if then else rules. A lot of things around the Traefik middleware is based on URL string manipulation, where mesh is the idea of just network path. Mesh does a really good job of, well, it is a service mesh, right? But it does a really good job of allowing you to not only do traceability and observability, but also do like canary, blue, green. You can, from a network point of view, you can route traffic. What Traefik does is not necessarily from a network point of view, but it does it from an HTTP kind of application URL point of view. So it's kind of solving a similar problem, but at different layers of the OSI model, if that makes sense. Hopefully that helps. Okay. I have to apologize. I got to do a little bit of a shameless pitch, but this does actually plug into Traefik. So notice in Traefik, we've got all these routers. We've got all these apps. I work for StackRox. I think it's the really, really strong security platform. One of the things we have, this is our dashboard. Let me go to our dashboard. This is our product. One of the things that we really have that really ties into this is two major things. One is the network graph, okay? So here we can actually start to drill in and see the namespaces. One of the things that's kind of important is this idea of understanding what traffic is available. I'm using traffic as in the TRAFF, not the TRE, right? What's possible? And I think this really kind of ties into the question about mesh too. There are ways to simplify and secure that network traffic. Having a consistent ingress with ingress rules is one great way, right? Using Traefik that way. Having the ability to then audit, to inspect, to observe, I think is another good way to do it. One of the things that we have in our product is this network policy simulator. And this allows us to say, hey, we've been watching the traffic for a while. We understand who needs to talk to whom. We have the way to kind of generate native Kubernetes network policies. So what ultimately this does is this gives you an actionable advice on how to make your cluster more secure. You can apply it here, but really what you probably want to do is share it, put it into a CI/CD pipeline, and get it kind of, put it in version control, sorry, then into a CI/CD pipeline and push to your cluster that way. The added advantage of this is you're using Kube native, right? You don't have to go and add on another product that you have to learn, that you have to configure, right? The least amount of things, like KISS principle, right? The least amount of things I think is a better chance of having consistent, more secure. One of the other things that we also do, which is really cool around StackRox, is we can kind of look at violations, and these are violations to policies. You know, in terms of networking, you know, is curl in an image? That could be really interesting in terms of if an attacker gets in, they can use that to get out. We also can kind of sort risk. Now, Calico is flagged as #1. Let's go ahead. Did I have it on here? I think I did, yeah. Let's go ahead and actually, let me do it. Let's do a high availability demo, and let's kind of come back in a minute and let's talk about kind of Nmap enforcement. I think that's also kind of cool. And we got a question, does StackRox support Calico's network policy CRD? Yeah, actually, because we operate underneath. Effectively, we're Kube native. We install as Kubernetes pods, but we operate at the kernel level underneath. So really the Calico's network policy CRD would be on top. In that case, you really wouldn't spend much time in that network graph potentially. Also help people like me who are using Docker C or using Docker Ingress. No, actually, StackRox would absolutely work on Docker CE, but there's a missing piece there. So StackRox is 100% Kubernetes native. So if you have standalone CE engines, you would want, you would absolutely need to install Kubernetes, unfortunately, which kind of takes things up a layer. Yeah, it's pros and cons. Traefik Enterprise? Yes, absolutely. I will get to that. Let's hold that question for a minute because I got some next steps and some suggestions and call to actions that we'll definitely get into that. Okay, so let's do an HA demo. So what I like to do is, let me pull up another screen. And let me flip back because I've got this. So what I'm gonna do is in a separate window, I'm gonna run a curl script. And while true means just gonna hammer it. So we're gonna hit this and we're gonna get this going. Let me get that off to the side. Okay, and then my other window, what we're gonna do is we're gonna stop. I'm gonna look at the traffic. So here's all our pods. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna log into one of the nodes and I'm gonna stop Docker. I'm gonna simulate an outage. And I'll minimize this so we can see that rolling. So you do get a little bit of hiccup, right? What we're seeing right now is the timeouts from the load balancer being able to figure out when, the nodes are down or up. But, if you're a typical web application and you've got a user, they're gonna hit refresh. You do have a few seconds before you really have a problem with service. And if you notice, we're still getting some requests through, and now the load, take a second too for the load balance, which should take like 15 to 30 seconds. But that load balancer will then start to go, okay, I know it's gone. I can start routing traffic. And so it'll start to pick back up. And if we go and look at our pods now, we actually spun up another pod, okay? The nice thing about it is, well, it's actually Kubernetes is waiting the timeout on one of those pods. But really what's going on is we've got two traffic pods. We still have those pods running. And if you notice, we've got kind of full network traffic flow now, which is great. We survived a node outage. Our users are still happy. We still have the service discovery. We still have the ability to see our apps. That's kind of a fun one. Cool, let me go ahead and quit that. Let me go turn it back on. Great, I don't even know which node that was. Oh no, yeah, I did. Let me do this. This is SH back in the node or Docker. What are the recommendations regarding node affinity for traffic when deployed as a daemon set? So really, the node affinity comes in with those service label, with those node labels, right? Remember, we labeled, one of the first steps we did is we individually said the last three nodes, in this case, I've only got 3 worker nodes. Those last 3 nodes are the traffic nodes. Where you're getting away, the second part of the question is, should traffic run on dedicated nodes for high traffic loads or use worker nodes? You're skipping ahead. In fact, I'll go ahead and show you now. Really, the idea is the top of the rack. So if we did our demo, right, for future right state, where to deploy, really think about top of rack. If I'm deploying into a multi-zonal cloud provider, I would definitely spread them out across availability zones. So that way, if I lose an availability zone, I still have some redundancy across that. Right, obviously, if you've got a large cluster, if you're running hundreds of nodes and thousands of apps, I would dedicate kind of top of rack. I would dedicate like these 3 are the Ingress nodes, only applications get deployed to that, and leave them alone. Let them do their thing because they're gonna have high network traffic. One of the things that I didn't show you, I'll go ahead and do this, and then I'll do my little StackRox demo again, because I got a vulnerability demo, which is kind of cool. TLS considerations. One of the things that I didn't show you was using Let's Encrypt and persistent storage for traffic. One of the things that traffic does is it stores, it can request and retrieve Let's Encrypt certificates automatically. I do that on my personal site, so I don't even have to manage the Let's Encrypt every 90 days like it is to get the certs. it does it for me. Now it stores it in a JSON file native. And so what the persistent storage allows us to do is basically kind of keep that and back that up in case we need to restore that. And this also leads into Traefik Enterprise. So Traefik Enterprise is really cool. What it does is it takes all these functionality with Traefik today, and it adds in a lot more robust, highly available framework, right? It creates its own control plane for Traefik, which I think is really taking it to the next step. So along the same lines of the question of dedicated nodes, as your cluster starts to grow, you would absolutely want to look at Traefik Enterprise, right? It's one thing to kind of use, not necessarily bubblegum and duct tape, but to build your own solution. But it's another thing when you hit that scale to be able to take advantage of the great work that they're doing at Containus and not have to worry about building it yourself and understanding where it goes and understanding if it breaks, because now you own the tech debt to a certain extent. Although, as you can see, like, we've had some really good high availability and things just work, which is great. Okay, let me flip back real quick for my one last little demo. One of the things I want to show you in StackRox is the violations. One thing we need to do, first off, we need to go to our policies. What I want to do real quick is just look for Nmap. Right, so I've got my Nmap policy chat, and I'm going to edit it. Out of the box, our policies, we have 63 policies, and we do not have enforcement turned on, but I'm going to turn it on. And what this policy is going to say is, any time it sees Nmap running in a pod, it's going to kill it. That's a bad thing, right? And if you're not familiar, Nmap allows you to do network scraping, and obviously that's not good for an attacker. We obviously don't want that. So let me go back here. Let me just show you. So I've got my Flask app, and by the way, that's app.docker.life for those playing along at home. I got a bunch of pods. I got a bunch of Flask. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to one of them, and that shuff is a randomizer, and I'm going to run Nmap in one of them. Let's see what happens. So let's go ahead and run that. Boom, killed. And if we go back here to StackRox, notice we now have the Nmap execution policy popped to the top. We can actually drill into it. We can say Nmap is run, the enforcement was to kill it. Here's the deployment that deployed it, and I was using the Nmap container. Obviously, you wouldn't do that in real life. The action was kill. I think that's kind of cool, especially, you know, if you're looking at not only security but network traffic. I think that's kind of a cool little demo. That's what I get to. Okay. And I got to do the pitch. They make me here. They pay for the lights. They pay for the Wi-Fi and all that. Really, the big takeaway with StackRox is the actionable advice. Kubernetes native and full life cycle, and I think it really does play nicely into looking at not only Traefik as an Ingress controller for Kubernetes, but as well as kind of coming up with a complete solution that covers, you know, Prometheus and Grafana, monitoring, metrics, logging, persistent storage, load balancers, traffic, all that. So at the end of the day, you end up with a very robust solution that is declarative, like all the great things, right? Why Traefik, right? Declarative, dynamic. You look cool. I think I look cool right now, especially with my Traefik hoodie. And that's it for my demos. I was hoping you guys had some more questions, because the ones that you've gotten have been pretty good. I highly recommend checking out the docs.traefik.io. Also, again, andc.info/Traefik if you want access to that GitHub page, and it's free and open source. And you can, and by all means, if you got questions on it, you can create issues there, or you can reach out to me at Clemenko on GitHub and Twitter, and then Andy@StackRox.com.
Cool. This was cool. I'm going to step in and maybe try and make some comments. First of all, great demo and great prezzo. Could you tell us a little bit about your infatuation with service discovery and what that looks like for you?
Yeah. So I'm an old system admin, and the idea of creating shadow IT, right? As a system admin, developers would come up with some great apps, some great GWiz. And there was always this disconnect between, like, oh, well, there's a new URL. Why didn't you add it? Like, at some point, we needed to kind of get over that and figure out a way as an admin, I wanted to empower the developers. Like, I don't want to have to recreate the work you do. I got other stuff I need to worry about. And so really having the ability with service discovery to, let's go look at the YAML, right? The developer can create that object. And as an infrastructure guy, I don't have to worry about it. As long as I set up Traefik and they create this and tell us what URL it needs to be, then it'll just work. And here's the other cool thing about it that I really like is the fact that as a developer, I'm a pseudo, right, DevSecOps. As a pseudo developer, I love the ability to be able to just throw something up and test it and have that instant gratification. I don't want to have to go and create a help desk ticket and wait 2 weeks to get a URL to work. That to me is mind-boggling. That's a lot of productivity loss, or at least momentum in a certain project loss. And so having that service discovery capability, you know, in this case, we look at the providers are Kubernetes. Let's go ahead and go to docs, right? Yeah, service discovery. So you've got Docker, you've got Ingress. So Ingress route is a custom resource definition for Kubernetes, but we can pick up from Rancher, Marathon, Console. Really, the two big ones are going to be Docker and then the Kubernetes one. I use it as well for my own personal suite. So that dashboard, go back to it. This dashboard, I use service discovery within Swarm, right? If you look, my provider is Docker, right? I love the ability to just say Traefik, just figure out what's there and work. What this also means, this is kind of interesting. Remember I told you that we're running 3 independent copies, right?
Yeah.
In our cluster. Those independent copies go get their own service discovery because our authoritative state comes from the Kubernetes itself, which has high availability. So the nice thing about it is we don't.
Your business idea.
Sorry, guys.
Go ahead.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the idea of the service discovery, being able to kind of manage that and take care of it is really great.
Well, what I was looking up is something I'm going to share with everyone because I'm noticing here you have the tracing off, and I'd like to know what that's about.
So I am not a developer. I am a developer with a little d, not a capital D, right? Really, the reason why I'm tracing off is because I don't know enough to be able to take care of contain.us. Nope, that's not you guys.
They're trying.
I know, Traefik.io.
There we go.
Right. Really, one of the things that Containus has is Jaeger. There's a couple others. No, sorry, Jaeger. There's a couple others out there, right? Really, I don't have the URL for it right now, but really what it kind of comes down to is the ability to monitor, or sorry, observe all of the actual HTTP calls or all the calls between the containers. Not being a developer, I don't have that enabled. I don't have that installed. But that's something you could very easily add on to and extend Traefik's capability, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it pinged my brain because what I'm gonna put in the chat box right now is a discussion that Brett Fisher, who many of you probably know.
Love Brett.
Yeah, Brett Fisher spoke with our VP of Engineering, Gerald Crows, and I swear, and don't quote me on this, but I swear he was saying like, a lot of people don't know you can turn that on, and when you turn it on, there's like this whole other world.
Yeah.
So link to that in there so you can learn about that. Cool, man, and thank you for that. And there's a couple of questions that Kasim actually just asked, so I'll be quiet for a bit.
Yeah, so it says, very interesting. I'm still learning Kubernetes and developing an app that I'm moving into microservices. Cool. And this is very interesting to see. I will look into the repo and pick up what you've explained. Awesome. So the next one is, can you dumb down for me what mesh exactly does? I hear service mesh a lot, and it's used to basically route communication from one service to another and not allow direct communication. But what exactly does it help with, and what are the advantages of using it? Okay, so we'll go to Traefik.io, and we'll actually go and look at the mesh product. What service meshes in general are is a way to be declarative about network traffic. Think software-defined network, okay? Who can talk to what when? What they're doing is they're effectively doing a software-defined network within the Kubernetes space itself. Now, there's some things that go along with it. You can do TLS termination between containers without the container itself knowing. So as a developer, you develop your app, you don't worry about, and you say, app A needs to, container A, microservice A needs to talk to microservice B because of this, X, Y, and Z, whatever reason. And then the service mesh declarative can describe that relationship. And then what it effectively does is whitelist that connection. But it can also do TLS termination for it. It can do a lot of other little things. It can also do graphing based on that as well. So you can start to get observability into that network traffic. The nice thing is, though, at the state of the tooling today, you can get that network observability from a tool like StackRox because we're Kube native. You can do it to a certain extent, a little bit with Traefik. You can do it with mesh. You can do it with other service meshes. And really, I'll let the website, kind of speak for itself, but really you can optimize and you can improve security. And really what you've got to look at is this mesh proxy ends up allowing you to do a lot of that communication. Where you need it, really this kind of comes down to, there's a few edge cases that I see that require mesh, automatic TLS termination of all containers. Being a former DoD contractor, that's something that's very popular there, right? TLS all the things. And not having the developer or the developer to kind of understand how to pack every microservice with a cert is a big thing. There's a huge cost savings there. And so if you can do it kind of programmatically on a cluster and say, okay, all of these have to have certs and all these certs get registered from this device over here. So you've got what's called a hardware security module in HSM kind of handing out those certs as needed. That's kind of a cool thing. But I think when you start looking at service meshes in general, that's more of a run kind of situation, right? Where a lot of people are in a crawl walk. Kubernetes is still new. There's still a lot of education that needs to go on. And honestly, the tools are maturing and getting better in general. So I think when you hear a lot about service mesh, but wait, get your microservices app running first, and then look into, are there things that you'd like to do from a programmatic network level that you can't do natively with Kubernetes today? Hopefully that helps. Again, I think crawl, walk, run. Let's all crawl and let's walk a little bit, and then start looking at Istio and mesh and all these great service meshes for the run phase, if that makes sense.
Well, that was awesome. And I haven't heard SDN for a while. And as someone who I helped build SDN Central when it was SDN Central.
Nice.
So it's kind of it holds weight in this heart. I'm going to put the Mesh online meetup that we had about a month ago into the chat box, if that's useful.
Yeah, that was a really good meetup, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, I love when our team is able to present, because hopefully we can do another one now that we're coming out with next iterations, but like it's just so incredibly powerful because that's the brains behind the software, right?
Yeah.
So let's see, any more questions while we have Andy here in our grip? And then from my side, I'm sharing upcoming events with you, the page. We have next week, we have Chris Weigman from WP Engine, which should be cool. And then Alejandro Betancourt from who does work. We're going to talk about HA, and he does work with Rasa, Docker, and Traefik. And then I need to upload some more. So if any of you are actually using a Traefik at your companies and want to speak to an audience such as Andy did, of course you have to be quality like he is. Please ping me. But what else, Andy? Andy, before we go, do you want to tell us? I'd like to hear just again, what does StackRox do, and how can StackRox help companies, and how can StackRox with Traefik help companies?
Well, I think, Patricia and I were talking before this podcast about having a strong, like full stack, which Kubernetes distribution, which operating system, which cloud provider, and really what, in my mind, that stack is going to include, Prometheus, Grafana, Traefik for Ingress, because of how easy it is to deploy and how strong it is. StackRox is kind of a security layer. It's kind of a trust but verify. And as you saw on like that Nmap, it gives you the ability to kind of be proactive around security, which I think a lot of people are lacking right now. Just ask Equifax, Tesla, Shopify, the list is long, and I think will continue to grow. Really just what we do is we provide actionable advice. There's a lot of other products out there that are competitors that tell you, hey, there's something wrong, but that's not good enough. You got to say there's something wrong and here's how we recommend you fix it. Let's give you the tools to take action against it. Also being Kubernetes native now, unfortunately for Docker CE folks, if you're running Kubernetes on top of Docker CE, great. If not, that's understandable. Being a former Docker engineer. But I think really having the Kubernetes native, the ability to look at network traffic, to look at deployments, to really drill into where things came from, how they got there, and then having the security for both build, deploy, and kind of that runtime. Now that Nmap demo is a runtime. We have ways to kind of create policies for build. In other words, make sure that the YAMLs have resources that aren't doing something, that aren't asking for escalated privileges, things like that. And then we also have a hook into kind of Jenkins and CI/CD to really kind of look at all those three phases of an application kind of life cycle. I think having that actionable advice is the way we stand out, and the fact that we're native, and our CTO founder is former NSA, our other co-founder is former White House digital czar for under Obama. Like, so we understand security, which is great.
Wow, that's pretty interesting backstory. It's so funny. There's so much information out there that you never hear about these, and I always find people so fascinating. I'm sure they have a lot of if these walls could talk moments.
I can't tell you.
Yeah, I don't want to know. Well, anyways, everyone who's hanging out, Miko, thank you for showing up. Jason, Fahim, Cody, and all the rest of you. Thank you so much. And please, again, Andy's on the Twitters. He's very responsive. And thanks for the great feedback here. And I personally enjoyed it too. So on behalf of Containers and Traefik, Andy, thank you so much. And this will be uploaded to the YouTube channel.
Awesome.
So we can watch it over and over and over.
I'm going to promote it. Thank you.
Cool. And best to you and your family, safe flight home. And thank you everyone who showed up, and we'll see you for upcoming meetups.
Awesome.
Are we go? Okay. Oh, and virtual fist bump. Bring it on. Pow. Okay. Thanks everyone.
Bye, team.
Bye.